Um, Finally getting these videos done. What I wanted to do is to kind of talk to you just for a few minutes before I actually show you what your manuscript could look like. The goal of the manuscript is to give you cues as to remember sort of what your goal is and what you're trying to do. Sometimes I talk about choreographing, dancing, like when you choreograph a dance. Some people would not like that analogy or metaphor, but I think that it is part of the goal, at least on paper, to remind yourself as to what you're doing. Now, it does not need to look and be overly complicated. So you want to have enough direction to get through your piece, but you don't need it to look like Rainbow Bright. If you remember, I might be dating myself, but Rainbow Bright was a doll, and it was all about colors and the rainbow, etc. Your paper doesn't need to look like that. Now, however, if that works for you, then by all means. There's some of us, talking about myself maybe, who like colors and like things to be very clear and upfront. I'm just going to show you sort of what a plain manuscript looks like, or at least the process. Let me talk you through a little bit first. Once you've identified the passage or the scriptures that you want to choose, or that you're going to choose, let me just say this about that too. I'm remembering things as I'm talking. Well, one is you can use whatever translation you like. Okay, so that's the first thing. Use whatever translation you like. Two, you have the whole, was it 30 verses to choose from? So you can ideally choose the first 5 verses and then choose verses 20 to 30, right? So what am I saying? I am saying that you need to go in order. In other words, you can take verses 2, 7, and 8, and then verses 10 through 12. So you can be, there's a little creativity that you can utilize in terms of which verses you choose. So one, you can use whatever version you like. Two, there's a little creativity in terms of the order of your verses, meaning they need to still go in the order that they are in chapter 5, but you don't have to select the first 10 verses. If you wanted to break it up, the first 5, 10 through 12, and then 25 through 30, that's fine. And the goal is to give you a little creativity with the narrative, and to also be intentional about what it is that you want to highlight. The third thing, and this is just a suggestion, is you want to either retype the passage or handwrite the passage. Well, why do you want to do that? It's a way of sort of rehearsing the passage in a passive way. You don't have to memorize, but what will happen is, as you type the passage or handwrite the passage, you will find yourself memorizing or remembering certain sections. And just like when you learn a piece, if you play an instrument, or perhaps a particular position as an athlete, you know what to do, you know how to better execute. The same thing is when you are taking the passage and either retyping it or rewriting it. Some of the rote behavior can be beneficial. So let me summarize again. I'm saying use whatever translation. I'm saying that you have some creativity in how you pick your passages, as long as they stay in chronicle order, so you can skip verses. I am saying that you should then, after you've taken that passage, you should either type it or handwrite it. as a way to passively sort of get it into your system. And then what I'm going to show you is very gingerly how you might choreograph or organize your passage. One of the ways I'm going to upload to Brightspace, so you'll have that. You can use those markings, or you cannot. You can come up with your own sort of system, and that's completely fine. The only thing I ask is that if you develop your own system, your own notation system, you need to include a legend for me so that I know what you mean when I look at your manuscript. And so you can think about what's best for you. If you are somebody that likes to do handwritten manuscripts or do your manuscripts by hand, meaning you type them or you print them out and then you do your markings, you need to scan it and save it as a PDF. Don't save it as a JPEG, save it as a PDF. If you are savvy enough with Screen or have an app where you can mark up your PDF, that's even better. You technically do need a new manuscript for every class. So for example, when we do every workshop, you should have a fresh manuscript. Your recording manuscript, though, should reflect any changes you may have made during workshop. So let me say that again. For the second half of the semester, you should have a manuscript, a fresh one. You're gonna have a manuscript for workshop, and then after you've gotten some feedback, it is very likely that you may need to make some changes, or you, in your practice, you may realize you want to make changes. You should have a new manuscript. Now, it may not be radically different, but you should have a manuscript that reflects those changes. So now I'm going to show you what it could look like. There are a lot of ways to organize your passage. I'm fighting the wind right now, but this is one, and I am going to also upload this to Brightspace in PDF form. So it's called a scoring guide, and this is from the Oral Interpretation of the Bible. Jack's Getting the Word Across is an oldie but goodie, and he also has a way of doing it. It's not as detailed as this, and so I'm giving you all this one this time around because I want you to have some options. You can use this or you cannot, so you don't have to use this, but if you want to use it, you can. So, or if you want to use some of them, you can. So it just provides you an example or some structure. So this is the guide. The first one says circle words as a definition alert. Okay, I'm going to go through each of these and then I'm going to show you what it looks like. They say make a box around words that are difficult to pronounce, articulate, or enunciate. So this can give you a clue like, okay, I need to take a breath. I need to pause before I say this word. Place brackets around phrases. I'm also going to show you something else about how to phrase and organize text. A single quotation mark indicates a place to breathe. Okay, so if you have a single quotation mark, it might be a place for you to cue yourself to breathe. Double quotation marks are places you want to take an audible breath, right? So you want the breath to be audible and you want it to be noticeable for whatever reason. Tone changes should be written out. Mousy, thunderous, cascading. So think about your inflections for tone changes. You can, but you don't have to. Emotional cues should also be written out. Pondering, elated, angry. Underline words, letters, or phrases you want to emphasize for effect, right? Okay. And let me turn page. Number 9 says place periods between words that you want to speak distinctly. Okay? Use a curved line above words you would like to slur together for a blended effect. Use a backslash to indicate a pause and a double one for a major pause. Use arrows to indicate pitch, change, and direction. A longer sliding arrow can show a crescendo. Monotone can be indicated with a wavy line. Content meaning should be written in the margins or over the text. Okay, so these are some. It might seem like a lot, and so you can pick and choose which ones of these you'd like to use. You're also free to come up, sorry, I'm fighting the wind, come up with your own, right? Your own set of notations. But if you needed a guide, if you need something to use, this will be uploaded along with the video, and so you can use it, okay? In the next section, I'm gonna show you what it looks like with about 2 or 3 verses from a song. Y'all see what I'm dealing with, right? Hey, I'm back with another YouTube video. Psych, it's not a YouTube video. What I am trying to do now is to show you a little way to start to make notations. I started something over here, but I continued on a separate piece of paper, so I'm going to show you that later. So, I wanted to show you side by side kind of what this looks like. And I just want to point out to you what I use. So we're using Psalm 23. Notice how it's sort of typed out. And notice there are none of the punctuation or grammar indications, right, that are in here. So there's no punctuation, there's no phrasing. So you get to be creative with this. This is the way that it was set up in oral interpretation of the Bible, but you can set your passage up in a myriad of ways, and I'll show you another style, particularly for phrasing purposes, that might be beneficial. So I used the brackets, I used a single quotation mark to indicate breath, and I think I used the pause marks because this is a familiar passage of scripture, and I didn't want to mark it up too much, but I wanted you to hear me read this as I say it. So, and I'm just going to go up to here. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. Okay, so that's just one way, and that's using the scoring guide that I'm going to place online for you. Again, I told you all I'm fighting the wind. The other way is more for phrasing, and you can also do emphasis as well, but this is specifically for phrasing. And so remember, when phrasing, we separate, right, idea, what goes with what. So I'm going to read this, and I did this more like in the Jack style for phrasing. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. Yes, that is different from the way that you normally hear the passage read, but it's an example of how you can be a little bit more creative and also lift up certain things. So this is organized specifically, and I hand wrote it for phrasing. I could also type this, and basically what you have is an indentation in each line for each thought or whatever words you have grouped together. So that's what you have, okay? And you can still break that down by verse. Now, if I wanted to emphasize, or you heard me emphasize certain things, I can go in and underline things that I want to emphasize and make some of the other notations. But this is just a way to give you some idea, right, of how to begin. You don't need all of these marks, so I don't want you to feel that you need that. But you should use some of them as a way to kind of get a sense of, to remind you of where you're going and what you intended to do in a particular passage, okay? So I'll read it again. This is the Jack style. So if you ever want to Google the book, Getting the Word Across, it's kind of old, but he has a style of phrasing, and so I used his style of phrasing to write this. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down. In green pastures he leadeth me. Beside the still waters he restoreth my soul. Okay, so I did something different here. I phrased differently, and that was intentional. Again, just to show you all what's possible and kind of what you can do. Okay? All right. Bye-bye.